Welcome to the NT Podkast. My name is Nemanja Jurišić, and today we have a fascinating discussion with Mr. Mark. Mark, welcome. How are you?
Thank you for having me on your show. I'm Mark Haughwout. My background is in biblical Hebrew, studied at the Hebrew University in Jerusalem. And so we're going to be talking today, I think, a little bit about the Mount Ebal Curse Tablet. Up front, I want to say I am not an archaeologist. I do archaeology for fun, but my background is biblical Hebrew.
Amazing. I appreciate your time. And you wrote an article named Mount Ebal Curse Tablet, a refutation of the claims regarding the so-called Mount Ebal Curse Tablet. So that is exactly our topic today. And Mark, can you please tell us something about that? What is the background of that discussion?
Sure. So in December of 2019, Scott Stripling from Associates for Biblical Research and his team performed what's called wet sifting of a previous archaeological site up on Mount Ebal. It had previously been excavated by Adam Zertal. And when you do an excavation, you end up with dump piles. You dig through the dirt looking for pottery, for whatever you might find in there, and then you dump the dirt. And so since that time, since Adam Zertal's excavation, they've developed what's called wet sifting. So normally you always dry sift. You put the dirt you dig out through screens. You're looking for small finds. You'll find all kinds of little things. Sometimes you find coins, sometimes beads, other tiny objects when you do the dry sifting. But the dry sifting will mix a lot of small finds. It'll miss them completely because those small finds will be encased in dirt and you'll just miss them. The dirt will just get tossed away into a pile. And you end up with these huge piles on any excavation of dirt. But Scott Stripling has been using wet sifting, and that was developed. It was actually developed before the Temple Mount Sifting project, but that was the project that really brought it to light. So a little background, the Temple Mount Sifting project came about as a result of some work that the Waqf, the Jordanian guys that are up on the Temple Mount, decided to do a little remodeling. And instead of actually doing an archaeological excavation on the Temple Mount, they just dug out the dirt and threw it away. And so Gabriel Barkay, a famous archaeologist, said, hey, let's wet sift that and see what we find. And that's exactly what they did. And they found all kinds of stuff. Stripling has done a really good job of advancing wet sifting to a really high level. And they do find a lot of objects. I've done it both at the Temple Mount Sifting Project and with Scott Stripling. And we find all kinds of little things that you would totally miss if you didn't wet sift. Wet sifting is very labor intensive. It takes a lot of volunteers. That's why a lot of excavations don't do it. They don't have the manpower. To his credit, Scott Stripling has a very well organized and very large excavation with a lot of volunteers. Typically the biggest excavation in Israel every year, as far as the number of volunteers on it. And so he has the manpower to do wet sifting of everything they dig. And they've been doing this at Tel Shiloh, where I've worked with him. But what he did is he went to Mount Ebal and took that excavation dump piles from Adam Zertal's dig and ran those through a wet sifting. Now, the complication was, once you have a dump pile of dirt, you don't have the stratigraphy, the layers anymore, knowing exactly where something was found. So in other words, if you find an object in an excavation, you can date it a number of ways. One of the ways is you look at what pottery is being found around that object. And you say, all right, the pottery dates to Iron One or to late bronze or whatever. And you say, anything found around that pottery probably dates to that same time period. Once everything is in a dump pile, you no longer have that stratigraphy. Everything's mixed up and jumbled. To further complicate the matter, Scott Stripling and his team had to move the dump pile to a different location before they could even wet sift it. And that has to do with the political situation. They're dealing with Mount Ebal, which is near Shechem, modern day Nablus. It's kind of a hot spot in the so-called West Bank. And so because of the political situation, they had to relocate the dump pile. So now an already jumbled mess of dirt is being jumbled again, and they're wet sifting it. So whatever they find, they can't guarantee that it actually dates to the late bronze, or thereabouts, it might have been an object that was sitting completely on top of the dirt that Zertal moved. Because when you get to an excavation, there's been layers of dirt that have literally fallen out of the sky and covered the excavation. You have to get through all those layers before you even get down to your actual excavation layer. And so it's entirely possible that a piece of lead could have fallen in the last 1,000 years on top of the dirt and got jumbled into the dump pile. So there's no way to really date that piece of lead. It does indeed come from Greece. That's been determined based on metallurgical analysis. But lead has been coming from Greece into Israel for a long time. And it went through periods up and down as far as number of imports and size of imports. But so we can't really date that lead object based on anything. Scott would like to date it based on the fact that Adam Zertal was finding pottery from basically the late Bronze Age. And you simply can't do that because it's all been jumbled at this point. And we can't guarantee that little lead piece, which is 2 centimeters by 2 centimeters by 3 millimeters thick, where it came from. Now, it is definitely very old. You can tell that just by the appearance. But regardless, the neat thing is that Scott did indeed find that because of wet sifting. We wouldn't even be dealing with this object if there wasn't wet sifting. So it's neat that he was able to find that and some other, less significant objects as well. When he found this object, he tried to open it up because it's closed like a book. So someone had deliberately folded it over. It's definitely it's not a chunk of metal from somewhere that just happened to be there. It's actually a deliberately made object for sure. Scott tried to open it up, but when he did, a little corner just broke off, indicating he can't open it up. So then they said, let's do X-ray tomography on it. So just try to read what's inside. Now that's been done successfully a number of other times, but not on lead objects. It's only been done 2 other times on lead objects because lead, if you remember, Superman is a great example. He had X-ray vision, but he couldn't see through lead, right? Because lead kind of stops X-rays. And so we know that's already a problem with X-rays, trying to deal with lead. They did perform the X-ray tomography, and when they were done, there was a couple of scratches inside that looked like it might have been letters. And the question is, are those actually letters, or are they just scratches that kind of look like letters? And I don't know let me see if I can bring this up for you on my screen. Are you able to see that red outlined picture from the lead that I'm showing on my screen? All right, let's see. How's that?
All right, I see it. Yeah.
You see it now. Okay. So this is a view from one of the scans that they made. And here's an object right here. If you can see my cursor there, that looks kind of like a head with a couple of horns on it. And that somewhat resembles what an ancient aleph would look like, the letter A in Hebrew.
It looks like aleph, right?
Yeah, looks like an aleph. And over here you have a letter that kind of looks like the ancient letter Hey. It's kind of like a stick figure man holding his hands up. Here's the head and his arms. And so those became apparent to anybody who viewed these scans. They're like, kind of looks like a letter, could just be scratches. We don't know, right? And so maybe not. And if you look at any old piece of stone, any old piece of lead, anything old, it's going to have scratches in it. And I've even looked at my mother's wood dining room table, and it had a number of scratches on it that looked like olives. And so anytime you have a bunch of scratches, you can't be sure that those scratches are actually letters. I want to share this one other picture with you. This is also from Stripling's report. This is the outside, and this is the Mount Ebal tablet or lead object that they found. And Scott and Peter Gert van der Veen, the epigrapher on the project, claimed that maybe this was an olive here. And it kind of looks like an olive, but it's not connected to any other letters. There's no other letters here. So you would have to just write that off as coincidental scratches that look like they could maybe be a letter, maybe not. But anytime you have an individual letter like that, or something that looks like a letter, if it doesn't come with other letters, you can't be sure that it's a letter. It's a bunch of scratches. If there was 2 or 3 other scratches next to it that look like letters, you'd say, oh, maybe that's a word there. Maybe that's some really sloppy writing, maybe not. And so the question is there writing on the inside? And Scott Stripling and Peter Gert van der Veen and Gershon Galil, who were the 3 guys, well, there was a couple other people on the team as well that looked at this, but they all said, we think we see letters. And Gershon Galil of the Haifa University, who is now off the project, Scott had to relieve him of being on the project, came up with what he thought was a whole lot of letters, and came up with a whole curse inscription out of what he thought he saw. And he thought he saw all these letters on there within it. And he came up with 48 letters. That's Gershon Galil's interpretation. Now, Scott does not agree with Galil's interpretation. Neither does Peter Gert van der Veen. I've talked to Peter quite a bit. He's the only other pigrapher on the project that is an expert in Hebrew language, Near East letters. And he said maybe he sees 10 to 15 letters in there. But whether or not there's letters in there cannot really be shown by the evidence they've brought forth. Maybe they saw letters, maybe they didn't, but they haven't provided the evidence for it. They haven't provided the pictures. And when we look at what Gershon Galil did, he saw scratches on the inside that he thought were letters, but they followed an incredibly crazy path. If you follow the path here with the red line, that's Gershon Galil's first line of text. And then he follows this crazy blue line for a second line of text, and then this crazy yellow line. And it's just all over the place. It's obviously just nonsense. And van der Veen and Stripling has since pointed that out. And Galil's had other, call it projects he's been on that he's just invented imaginary letters. And it's really a shame because he was quite the talented scholar, but I really think he's had some problems in these recent years that he's got quite an imagination. And we'll just leave it at that.
Okay, so this is really messy. I didn't see any example in ancient history that looks like this path, right? So,
Yeah.
do you have any paths that is like this circular or anything?
No, it's really quite strange what he came up with. You know, if you look at, if you can you see this on my screen? This other defixio.
Yes, yes.
Okay, so this is actually a defixio is a curse tablet. And so this is one from Greece, and Greece is kind of the origin of curse tablets. They really came up with this whole method of curse somebody write the curse on a sheet of lead, fold it up or roll it up and bury it. And you can see how straightforward these lines of text are on this. They just run straight across, and they're very neat and orderly. It looks like a text, right? That's a very typical defixio. What we see.
And what's the size of this tablet? Sorry for asking.
This particular one, it's a similar size to the Mount Ebal Curse Tablet. I don't remember off the top of my head, maybe 3 centimeters or something. They're small. They're very small. You know, a lot of these are the size of maybe the end of your pinky finger or something. They're rarely very big. And they found quite a few of them from Greece, also in Rome, but that had to do with when Greece ruled Rome, not so much with the Roman traditions. And most of them date to the Greek times. The one I just showed you, I think, was maybe 400, 300, 400 BC. Nothing in the range of what Stripling is claiming to have found with this Mount Ebal lead object, which they're dating to approximately 1200. There can be an argument: is it 1250? Is it 1200? That doesn't matter. It's way too old to be a defixio. Now, there were curses in ancient times. There's no doubt. There was curses over tombs. There was all kinds of curses. There's curses in the Bible, but there was never these lead defixios known from ancient times. When I say ancient, the late Bronze, the Iron Age, it just wasn't known from those time periods. But again, you look at the outside of this thing, and they're claiming there's letters all over the outside as well. And I'm not seeing letters, and I don't think anybody else is either, besides Scott and Peter. And this is the outside. This could be examined by anybody, and there's just nothing there. It's a bunch of dents and scratches. You can say
Yes,
that.
do you agree with Dr. Falkman? He says that it is pareidolia because when you see in a sky, you can see some shapes. So this is something like similar.
Yeah, it's very simple. You're laying on your back outside and you're looking at the clouds in the sky and you're saying, oh, there's an elephant, or that looks like a mouse, or that looks like a person. It's in your imagination. And if you stare at this long enough, you'll start to think you see stuff. But you need to back up and say, wait a second, no, I don't. This is scratches. It's just not there. And they claim that they're going to publish in the near future what they find written on the outside. But I don't think it's going to be received well, because we can both see this and there's just nothing here that looks like a text.
All right. So can you please explain how is this connected with Mount Ebal as a location? Because if I correctly understood, that's from Jerusalem, right? Or something.
No. So Mount Ebal is up in the north, some of the north central Israel. It's kind of it's in the territory of Ephraim and Manasseh up there. It's where Joseph was buried, Shechem, Nablus. It's up there in the territory. It's quite far north of Jerusalem. This has nothing to do with Jerusalem at all. The actual tablet, or whatever you want to call this lead object, is stored in Jerusalem today, but no, there's no connection to Jerusalem whatsoever. It's near ancient Shechem, and you had Mount Ebal on the north, Mount Gerizim on the south of Shechem. And the Israelites, when they invaded the land, were told to go up on these two mountains, and on Mount Gerizim, they would put the blessing, and on Mount Ebal, they would put the curse. And they'd read out the curses. If you don't obey Yahweh, you're going to be cursed. If you do obey Yahweh, you're going to be blessed. So Mount Ebal became identified with the idea of cursing. That's where the Israelites proclaimed the curse if you didn't obey God. And so I think there's a little bit too much of an imagination there, especially on the part of Gershon Galil, that because this was found on the Mount of Cursing, that surely it must contain a curse tablet inscription. And so Galileo came up with a really wild, I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a minute here, a really wild explanation of what he thought was in it. And it's really a shame, because Galileo's, he basically, let me see if I can bring this up for you. He invented a text, Galileo did, that said, you are cursed by the God Yahweh. You will die cursed. You will surely die. Cursed you are by Yahweh, cursed. And so that all sounds very much like something you read in the Hebrew Bible, as far as it's got parallelism. It's a chiastic formula. We see these curses in Deuteronomy. Maybe this sounds like something you'd find in the Bible. But the problem is, and let me see if I can screen share this with you. And so you've got this Hebrew text that Galil says he saw. And to be clear, Scott Stripling and Peter Gert van der Veen do not claim it says this. They do claim to see letters in there, but they don't say it says this. And there's numerous problems with this. The very first, any Hebrew scholar, and this is, when I heard first about this Mount Ebal Curse Tablet, I got all excited. Everybody was waiting for their report to be released. It was a very exciting find based on what they were saying. But when it was actually released and we all saw the text, any even amateur Hebrew scholar is like, wait a second, there's a big problem here. Ancient Hebrew, early alphabetic, did not contain any vowels. It was a purely consonantal text. They didn't have vowels at all. You just had to know what the vowels were. Well, the problem here is that Gershon Galil came up with a text that was full of vowels. And the Hebrews didn't really start using vowels in this way until around the time of King Hezekiah, around 700 BC. So Galileo is claiming that 500 years earlier, they were already using vowels extensively. And it's just not consistent with anything we found in archaeology. The very first word is you, like the pronoun you are cursed. And it should be spelt with two letters, just consonants, but Galil added what's called the matre lectiones, which is in ancient times, they took consonants and they converted them into vowels to help you read the text. But that didn't start really happening until at least the 10th or 9th century, and not in this way until around the 8th century BC. And so, very first word, atah, as soon as any Hebrew scholar sees this, they're like, no, that can't be from that time period. It's impossible. The second word, aror, cursed, it has a vowel on the inside. We didn't see any vowels on the inside until around 700 BC, and even then, very scantily used. The Siloam inscription doesn't have them. For example, the word shalom in the Siloam inscription is spelled without any vowels, just consonants. So even there, which is, you're roughly 700 BC, the vowels just don't exist. And in the interior of words, here Galil has one in the interior of a word, aror. And then they go on to shorten the name of Yahweh, of all things. So they're claiming all these other words have full spellings, and then the name Yahweh is shortened. It's just completely inconsistent with everything we know about epigraphy. And, if they were right, it would change everything we think right now. It would be such a revolution. It would be really neat, but there's no evidence for it.
Yeah, it is not consistent with lead tablets. That's from period of Greece. First mention of the Yahweh outside of the Bible. It's not consistent also with walls. It's from 700 BCE. So many problems. And if that's true, that's changing whole history.
It
Right.
is. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think, now, I'm not going to discount that there might be writing inside. It's just they have not brought forth sufficient evidence to show that there was writing inside. And it very well could be. One scholar proposed that this was a fishing weight. Stripling rejects that idea. I don't out of hand reject that thought. It is possible that it is a fishing weight. They would take lead in ancient times, and basically you could fold it over and on top of your fishing net to help your net sink. So it is possible it's a fishing weight. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But even if it is a fishing weight, that wouldn't mean that there couldn't be any writing inside. It is still possible there could be writing inside. There was writing on various fishing weights. We just don't know if there's writing inside because they have not brought forth the evidence. Can you see this black and white scan they're showing?
Yeah.
Okay, so if this is a letter hey, it's possible, and that could be a letter tav. Those could be just scratches too, but it could be scratches by another culture entirely. It could be scratches that referred to Tehamat, the Babylonian goddess. It could be talking about that. It could be something that's totally pagan, unrelated to Israel in there. So the object is undateable itself. And then we don't know if there's letters inside. It's possible some of those scratches are letters, but it may be completely unconnected to the Hebrews. It could be pagan culture.
Yes, so I also talked with Richard Haas. He says it looks like fishing weights to me. so recognize this. Yeah. So what other scholars say about this, about Stripling's work, and yeah.
So I know that Christopher Rolston, who's one of the more famous epigraphers out there dealing in the Near East, and also I believe he's the editor of Bar now. I can't remember. He's on the staff anyway. He says, he doesn't see anything there. It could be there's something in there, but they haven't substantiated it. So, Stripling may be seeing something, Van der Veen may be seeing something in there, but they've got to show the world. They've got to bring it to the world if they want to make these claims. You've got to do better than these scans. There needs to be more evidence.
Yes. So can we just talk about Mount Ebal altar, because Stripling would say that there is beneath the rectangular altar in Mount Ebal that dates to 13th century BCE, and he says there is an older one, circular altar, dated around 1400 BC. So, what do you think?
As far as the dating of those altars, I'll leave that up to the archaeologist. Abigail Leavitt is going to publish concerning what she found or what she's reviewed there. Zertal is the original excavator, and yes, there is indeed an altar, the big square altar, and I'm 99.9% sure, yes, there is a round altar underneath that from an earlier period. Now, is it 1300? Is it 1400? I don't know. We're going to leave that to the archaeologist. The interesting thing is Abigail is doing a review of the bones they're finding there. So one of the things you look for to discern if something is Israelite or not is, do you find an abundance of kosher bones, kosher animal bones, or are you finding pig bones and other such bones that the Israelites would not have been sacrificing? And so Abigail's going to publish on that. And it looks like, yes, indeed, that was an Israelite altar there based on the bones they're finding. So I do agree that, yes, there's a square altar. Yes, there's a round altar underneath that was older. And that doesn't, there is precedent for that for sure. I mean, you see that even with Solomon's temple. Later on with the second temple, you see that also. They would build upon the same ruins, a more elaborate structure than the previous structure, but you do it in the same place and just build on top of it. That's entirely possible. And I do think it could be a Israelite altar or an altar that was used by the Israelites at some point. But as far as dating it exactly, does it date to Joshua's time? I don't think so. I would say it dates a little bit after Joshua, but it could definitely be from the period of the judges and be an Israelite altar. I don't have a problem with that.
Yes, okay, thank you so much. And what do you think about ABR institution? Because this is something like a shame because they really do bad work, and maybe some could disappoint in Bible because if they find out this is incorrect. So, what do you think about all this?
I think ABR was a little bit overzealous to get this published. This is not something unusual in the archaeology community. Archaeologists always have trouble getting funding, whether it's ABR, Scott Stripling, Israel Finkelstein, all the major universities, Haifa University, Jerusalem, they all have to bring forth what I would call sensational headlines in order to get grants, to get funding. I think ABR fell into the same type of trap. They found something. They did find a lead object, but they were too hasty to publish what they thought was found inside. And also they came out, unfortunately, in social media with various claims before any actual research was published, which was unfortunate, not all that uncommon these days. And I'm going to blame a lot of that on Gershon Galil because he has done that multiple times now. And he's not part of ABR. He's part of the Haifa University, but he really goes and makes claims on social media before the thing's published. And usually his claims can be refuted before it even gets to being published, unfortunately. So I think ABR jumped the gun. Again, it's not unusual. Adam Zertal, who did that excavation on Mount Ebal originally, has nothing to do with ABR. He claimed it was Joshua's altar. Did he really believe that? I don't know, but it gets him the press he wanted, which then helps you get the funding. You always have to say, we might find the Ark of the Covenant. We might find Joshua's altar. We found the golden calf from Moses and Aaron. You have to make these, you don't have to, but they often make these sensational claims in order to get attention. And I think ABR fell into that trap that so many other archaeologists and even high-level universities have fallen into.
Oh, great comment. Thank you so much for sharing these insights. So, Stripling said that we have three interpretations by Galil, by him, and third, I forgot. So he says that's okay because we have disagreements. So that shows that there is something that is written rather than there is nothing. So, what's your comment?
Show it to us. If there's something written there, show it to us. Bring forth the evidence. Show us the pictures. And let the scholarly community look at it and say, all right, we see it or we don't see it. I pointed out there are new methods now that they could go back and use that would further clarify if something is in there or not. I pointed that out in my paper. All of this costs money. Anytime you do any X-ray tomography, you do carbon-14 dating, you do any of this, it costs money. And any archaeologist is always scrambling for more money because it's really expensive to run a dig. It's hard to get funded. And so I'm not sure they want to spend money on that right now, but if there's some philanthropist out there that wants to cough up the money, there are new techniques that could determine if there is actually something found inside this or not.
Yes, thank you so much. And is it suspicious that they, for years, I think, hid from us publications? They firstly said there is a Mount Ebal tablet, and I waited, I think, 1, 2, or 3 years to see publication. So at first, they didn't show to scholars what they found. So yeah.
I would not criticize them for that. They've actually done a above average job publishing, ABR has. If you look at other digs, a lot of archaeologists will fail to publish. Zertal is an example. So many of them, because they all want to dig, they all want to find stuff, but they don't want to take the time to do the reports. And it's not unusual for this to take 2 years to come out for the actual report. The problem, again, was that it came out on social media right when they found it. And it took 2 years, which is not an unreasonable time for the actual publication to come out. My paper refuting them took on the order of 9 months to get through the whole process, because you have what you want to publish, and then you have to go to the journal, and then the journal comes back and says, we need this edited and that typeset differently. And my paper was done within 3 months of theirs coming out, but it took another 6 months to get through the whole journal process. So I'm not going to blame them for taking 2 years. The blame, though, is that it should never have come out on social media with all these great claims right away. It should have been held back until they were ready to publish.
Yes, I agree. Thank you so much. And do you have any conclusion and message to people who want to search more about this topic? Anything to say? Yeah.
Yeah, I would say, one, don't repeat things you're hearing on social media or, claims by either side. Go read Scott's paper, read my paper, look at the facts, make your own decision, but avoid sensational claims. And I see this all the time with all kinds of finds, real finds, but they're too exaggerated and misused. Again, social media is such a curse when it comes to this type of thing. People will repeat what they've heard, pass it on without actually getting back to the sources and saying, what do we actually really know about this? And here in recent times, you've seen a number of fakes come forward. It's the deep fakes of the archaeology community. And I'm not saying that in this case, there's a fake here. In this case, it's a real lead object that was indeed found. The debate is, does it have writing or not? But, you can get into the Joash stele or any number of other objects, even the little ivory pomegranate that was bought by Israel for over $1 million, and it's probably a fake. You've got the ossuary of James, the brother of Jesus, another common, well-known fake, a real ossuary, but the writing was forged on it. And the forgers have gotten really good. They can fake the patina, they can fake the carbon-14 dating. And now you're even faced with a new problem. And since these fakes have always been sold on the open market, on the antiquities market, and they weren't found what's called in situ at an archaeological dig, now the consensus is to not accept any object that's being found on the antiquities market as being authentic, to look at it really critically, and to only accept things found in situ at an archaeological site. Now, the new problem is, if you're the guy making the deep fakes, you go and plant it on the archaeological site, bury it to be found a month later or a few days later to authenticate your fake. So that is the next level that we're now dealing with in this whole faking artifacts. And the reason they go to such lengths is, for example, that ivory pomegranate that was bought by Israel sold for well over $1 million. And so if you can make a little fake object, or James, the brother of Jesus ossuary, you've just made yourself $1 million. And so it becomes a thing of great value for these guys that are producing the fakes, and it's a real shame.
Wow, great information. And just one short question for you. What about secular archaeologists and scholars? Because I often hear something like David never existed, Moses never existed, at least they add, and as described in the Bible. So they have also sensational titles and yeah.
Yeah, you do. Yeah, David never existed. A great example was Israel Finkelstein, archaeologist at the time from Tel Aviv University, dug through a dump pile, a garbage heap. I believe it was in the Negev, might have been in the Sinai. I don't remember off the top of my head, but he found no camel bones in there. He's like, we didn't find any camel bones. This dump is from the time of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And the Bible says those guys had camels, but we didn't find any camel bones in this dump. Therefore, the Bible's fake. And I'm like, wait a second. Just because you don't find camel bones in one trash dump in one place does not mean the Bible's fake. And you get that same type of sensational claim on both sides. And again, it's trying to get at the bottom of it all, notoriety and money are the two things archaeologists, all of them, are looking for. There's this whole thing in academics of publish or perish, meaning that if you don't start publishing something, you're just going to perish from the whole scene. And so you have to come up with sensational claims. I saw Israel Finkelstein on TV claim that he's going to find possibly the Ark of the Covenant under a church he was digging at in the middle of Israel. It's like, no chance. But he does that in order to get the media coverage, to keep himself famous, to bring in more dollars. And it's these sensational claims are really upsetting. It's something I've learned to deal with and just kind of ignore them. And let's look at the actual facts.
Yes, great conclusion. Thank you so much, Mr. Mark Haughwout. So, dear audience, that was an insightful conversation. And if you enjoyed this discussion, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to NT Podkast for more deep dives into biblical history and archaeology. Let us know your thoughts in the comments, and we'll see you in the next episode. Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you.